This is Gemara Chulin, Daf Nun Hey, and we're holding on in Dalit on the base. We're about 10 lines from the bottom. The first one in line is Machshilin La'asid Lavai, discussing the mitzvah b'shaitai of Bikurim and why we were so lenient for the workers to stop their work and go out and greet those that brought the Bikurim, whether it was a mitzvah b'shaitai or whether it was just because, as the Gemara concluded, we don't want Nasit Lavai, people not to bring Bikurim, so we gave them the chizik that they needed. And now we go back to the trachea and how much of it could be missing, and the animal will remain kosher. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Kisela ki yoser mi kisela. That when they said the size of a sela, it means more than a sela. And ki iser ki yoser mi ki iser. When they say the size of an iser, it means more than an iser, which the Rashi over here and the Mefarshim explain that it has to be not precisely that size, but rather a little bit more. Almas, says the Gemara, we see from over here, except for Rav Nachman, ad v'loy ad bichlal, that whenever we say yisoidistic, whenever we say ad until a limit, is that the limit or does it include it? So Rav Nachman clearly holds ad v'loy ad bichlal, up until and not including Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. And doesn't mean ad ve'ad bechlal. Doesn't mean up into it and including it. It means ad ve'loy ad bechlal. Frak the Gemara say Rav Nachman. Rava asks Rav Nachman, Chavala yotzim and hamita ad chamisha tvachim tar. A bed. We're going to get into kelim et oiloi. Since the Tom of it, we have a bed that has a rope coming out of it up to 5 tfachim is tar. My love, chamishim ulamat chamisha lamata does not mean that 5 is like below it. 5 is like something smaller than 5, and that is the reason that it's tar. So what do we see? We see that it's ad ve'ad bechlal, it includes it. It says loy chamisha kilamal. Chamisha is like above it. Ace Tashima, another kasha, says the Gemara. So the Mishnah there by the bed says that if the rope is between 5 and 10 tvachim tall, it is tavi. My lava sari kilamata. What does it mean between 5 and 10? What is 10? Now we understand what this whole ad v'abachlal means. We have from 5 to 10. So is 10 like underneath it or 10 like above it? So for the fact that it says from 5 until 10 is tame, says the Gemara l'chayra, 10 is like below it. So we see that whenever we give a measurement, it's ad v'ad bechlal. It includes it. It says Marloya Sar Kilamala means up until 10, but once you hit 10, it'll be tar like above 10. Tashema, 2 lines on the bottom. Hadakin Jebek Licheres, small earthenware vessels. Hein v'karkir yoseim v'dafnoseim yeshvin shaloi misumachin. Whether they are whole or the bottom and the sides of able to still hold into liquid while they're still sitting there. What's the halacha? Shiuran, their measurement, as we turn over to the name and olives, sichas cotton, is the amount of oil needed to anoint a cotton, a day-old infant. Basically, the halacha is that something is only makabel tama, of course, if it is a clay kibble, if it can hold something. And the question is, how much does it have to hold? So over here we see that we have this piece of a vessel, a shard. We can almost envision, the cap of a bottle. Now a cap would be different. It's its own egina, its own kli. But let's say this is a shard. How much liquid could be held in there? Does it have a din of a base kibble? So says the Gemara, the shir is to anoint a finger of a day-old infant. Va'ad lug, and up until a lug. So says the Gemara, my love lug kilimata. Does this not mean that lug is like below it? And it will be similar to a vessel that can hold the smallest quantity. So again, akasha to Rav Nachman, you see ad ve'ad bechal, lug kilimata. And of course, everyone here is wondering, it almost seems arbitrary how we start off saying it's one way and we answer it's another way. Obviously, there's a lot of depth going on over here in the rayos. But for our purposes, let's continue. Tashema milug v'atza b'revius. So the Mishnah there continued that if it could hold a quantity of a lug until a sud, then it's mikabel tuma if it could hold at least a revius. So my lav saw kilomat, may lug va'ad saw. So the sug is like the lug, loy saw kilamala. Tashema. Weiter in that Mishnah, if it could hold, if this shark could hold from a sub till 2 sa, then it's Mekabel Tumah. If it could hold a half a lug, my love so same kilamata, lo so same kilamala. Tanya, but we learned in the Brisa lug kilamata, saw kilamata, saw sayim kilamata. We have a Brisa that articulates and explains that when all of these cases in the Mishnah where they really meant it's like kilimata, ad ve'ad bichlal, not kilimala. Kasha and Rav Nachman says the Gemara, Hasam over there, Rav Nachman is going to be maskim. Why is he maskim davka over there? Because over there it is a chumra, lechumra, the meravu, merav yechel kol shiuri chachamim lahachmir, chutz mikigrish ksamim lahakel. And Dekanami, it's precise. Allah, Dahi Chamisha Kilamala Asara Kilamata. Because Diktani Allah, we learned over there that particularly on those cases by the rope, Chamisha Kilamala Kasala Kilamata. So we see over there that we are going Lachamra. So in as much as Rav Nachman usually holds his own, that Ad Viloy Ad Bichlal does not include that measurement. But in those the cases that we quoted, which are cases where it's going to result in a Chumrah, then he is machmir, and he's masking that it's ad va'ad bichlal. We continue the 2 dots. If the tchol was removed, the spleen. The Mishnah is only talking about a case that is kosher if the spleen was removed entirely. Avol nikev if it has a whole treifa. So a little bit counterintuitive, perhaps, that if you remove the spleen entirely, it's okay, but not if it's missing a piece. Rashi explains that, again, whatever the science is, that if you remove the spleen entirely, the animal can live. But if a piece of it is missing, then the animal is going to be in terrible pain and illness, etc. So, Maser Rav Yossi bar Rav and Vitem Rav Yossi bar Zvida. If someone cuts off a fetus that is in the womb of the mother, and then leaves the animal inside, and then shechs the mami, mutter me'achila. The part that was taken off of the fetus is allowed to be eaten like the rest of the fetus. Minat cholu minat kloyos. If one detached part of the spleen or part of the kidneys, left it inside and then shechted the mother, aser ba'achila. You're not allowed to eat the Chullin, the kloyos, the spleen and the kidneys that you took out. So says the Gemara, what does it sound like? It sounds like dafka because you took it out from the baby inside the mami. Ha-behema gufa sharia. But it would sound like the animal itself, the baby itself, you're allowed to eat. Clearly, why would that be the case? Clearly, the reason is that even though a piece of the spleen is cut off, it sounds like the animal is still going to be able to live. And if the animal is still going to be able to live, therefore, you'll be able to eat the animal, and it's going to have a din of a. Not of a treifa. Responds the Gemara, and meaning, and even though it's not fully removed, a piece of it is removed. Responds the Gemara. Hu adin dafilu behema nami asira. Says the Gemara, really, I'll tell you that by behema itself, not just a tchol that was removed, the behema itself is aser. I did tani reisha motu b'achila tani seifa aser b'achila. So the first teretz is it's a classical agav that because we said in the ratio and we said in the seifa, it's not really a true din. Second answer is that no, over here it says nechtach. It's different than nikev. When it has nikev, it has a hole, it's punctured. It's going to be different than nechtach if it was cut off. We continue 3 lines on the bottom. Nitlu akla yois. The kidneys are removed. The animal is still a kosher. Amar rachish bar baba mishmei derav loksa bekula. Ahachas treifa. If the animal is diseased in even one kidney, the animal is diseased, then it is a treifa. So again, if the kidneys are removed, it's kosher, says the Mishnah. But Zakt Rachish Bar Papa, if there's a disease in the kidney, it's a treifa. So Amri Marav in the last line, Udimatai Lukusa. They said in Eretz Yisrael that this means that the Lukusa reaches to where, as we turn over to Nenheya Mebeis, you know where it reaches till? Lemakayim Charetz, the place of the kidneys, furrow, literally. Ve'echamakam Charetz, L'chiyura, Tetusi Masni. It's the white matter that lies underneath the loins of the animal. And of course, we're going to pull up a beautiful picture over here that's going to show us. You see a beautiful kidney, cross section, of course, and you see the area of the ureters and the blood vessels with the white matter that's entering in. And that is the area that the disease has to reach to, says the Gemara. Amar Rav Nechunya, says Rav Nechunya, Shaltinu, I asked, 1 second, let's just get our Rashi's visible. Shaltinu, I asked the Kula Trufai de Marava. I asked all the Treifa experts in Marava, in the West, in Eretz Yisrael. Va'amri li Hilchasa, and they said to me, the halacha is Kerachish Bar Papa. Like Rachish Bar Papa, that this diseased kidney is going to deem the animal a treifa. V'lesach like Rav Avira, we don't pass like Rav Avira, that a punctured spleen is a treifa. So says the Gemara, let's understand what this means. We'll get some nice pictures in a moment. Says the Gemara, Lo ya'amaran ela bekulshe. When do we say that we don't pass like Raviras only if the puncture of the spleen is in the thin part? Avo besomchi, but if it's in the fat part, treifa. V'yishtayer beika oivei dinar. Then as well, it's going to be a kshira. If there is the amount, the thickness of a dinner, then it's going to be kosher. So before we go weiter, let's pull up our spleen, and here we have it. And you see, this is the thick, the attached end, the thin, the hanging end, showing us where the issue has to be. And over here, showing you the spleen inside the animal, if you want to know where it is, as it's going to relate to, again, Nachamal, the thick attached end versus the thin, the hanging end. It says the Gemara, and that's going to be relevant where it's going to have a din of a treifa. Amir Rava Kol Apaisel Bereya Kosher. Bereya Kosher Bekulya. Any defect that disqualifies makes an animal a treifa. In the case of the reya, is kosher in the case of the kidney, meaning that which happens in the lungs is going to be the opposite in the kidney. And shari nekev basal bereya. Why? Because a small hole in the lung is kosher b'kulya. Is kosher in the case of the kidney. Says the Gemara, the kosher bereya, kosher b'kulya. Certainly, that which is kosher in the lung will be kosher in the kidneys. Really, is this a general rule? But we know there's mugla, there's pus that is kosher by the lungs, and yet pasal bekulye, and yet it pasals up the kidneys, and similarly very mayim zachan the ksherim hacha, and it's clear fluid, which in both cases is going to be kosher. So says the Gemara Elam Ravashi, as we as we move on to the first white line, says Ravashi, treifas kamedamis la'adadi. Ein oimin treifazu toimelazu. We cannot compare treifas. Why not? Treichotcha mikan umeisachot mikan v'chaisa. We decide that keeps on reoccurring that by treifas we cannot equate one to another. Now, just one more detail about this clear liquid. Umayim zaking sheirin layamara. When do we say that clear liquid in the animal is kosher? Eladitzili. Says the Gemara, that's only if the liquid was originally was fully clear, salul. Avalakiri, but if the liquid's going to be cloudy, treifa. Chitzili nami, and even when it's indeed clear, says the Gemara, loyamar and eladuloy sarich. Says only when, if it's not putrid, it's not smelly, aval sarich nachamo, it's going to make it a treifa. And finally, akulya she'ektina, a kidney that shriveled up due to disease, bidaka ad kfol, in a small animal, which is a sheep or a goat, then we have it to shrink the size of a bean, begasa ad kanava be beinonis, to the size of a medium grape. And we continue, Nita lalachi atachtoin, if the lower jaw was removed. Amar Rav Zeir lo yishana lo sheklu lachiyos, aydeli ita. Va'amar yavel. Eni yichol lachis aydeli ita mara treifa. Okay, something got this whole girsa. Question is, whether it can be kept alive by pushing, force feeding the animal. Nitlaim shall have the mother if the uterus was removed. Tana. He ha'im v'itar bachas v'ishal fuches. It's all the same thing. These are all considered the uterus. Charus of Shamayim ksheira. The lung shriveled by the hands of heaven, it's going to be a ksheira. So we are about 8 lines into the Y lines. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara. Ezeu charusa. 1 second. There we go. Ezeu charusa. What is this charusa? Kol shasam karei shalah, where the lung became shriveled. Bidei shamayim ksheira, bidei adam treifa. Shemin alazar amar af bidei kol abriyos. Even if it was frightened by the hand of other creatures, it's going to have the same din. Continues the Gemara. What is this bidei shamayim bidei adam? Ibayalu. Rav Shimon ben Elazar areisha kayu lekula, or yeseva kayu lechomra. Is Rav Shimon ben Elazar going in the reisha? When the Tanakhama said if it's shriveled bidei shamayim, it's going to be mutter. Comes Rav Shimon ben Elazar to be mekel, and he says that if it's scared by other people, it's also bidei shamayim and mutter. Or yeseva kayu, or as he say, it's considered to be done by hands, and it's going to be a treifa. Tashema detenech harusa bidei adam treifa. Shriveled lung bidei adam is a treifa, and Rav Shimon Elazar amar bidei kol abriyos. We see he says it clearly on the treifa. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Baruch Hana v'gazel b'midbari. He was going in the desert. Ashkei anu dechri did some mikrea didu, and he saw he saw rams that the lungs were shriveled, and he didn't know what caused them to shrivel. Was it b'dei adam? Was it b'dei shamayim? As he shall be mijasha amr lei b'kaita. I see. Amrulei bekaita aitiv mishichli chivara. In the summertime, bring white earthenware basins, malichna maya karira, filled with cold water. Vanachinu meis leis. Leave the lungs inside for 24 hours. If the lungs return back to the healthy state after sitting in the water for 24 hours, then we know today shamayim and it's kosher. Viloi treifa besifta. If it's in the winter time, I see mishichla shechumi. Bring basins of dark earthenware, malinu mayipshura, fill it with lukewarm water, and leave it in 24 hours. Yajaberi kasha vilai treifa. Okay, a classical Gemara giving us the scientific or mystical way of checking what is the status. And we go one job further. Hagluda says the Gemara, a flayed animal. Rameir says it's kasha. The Chum says it's treifa. Tanarabban agluder ameir mechashav chachamim ba'islim ukvar heyir elazar saf Rav Yecha ben Gudgad al Golguda shapsula. They already remade that it's possible, and I'm Rav Shimon Elazar chazar by Rameir. Rameir was chayzer that it's a treifa. Says the Gemara, Mechad Shimon Elazar polig. Does this sound like Rav Shimon Elazar? Polig Rameir begluda. Rameir argued with in case of a gluda. In the case of this flayed animal, Vatanim Shimon Elazar lenechler Rameir v'chamal gluda shapsula. Ukvar heder Rav Yishua ben Yehuda habasam l'nei Rav Akiva mishum Rav Tarfon al gluda shapsula. Everyone is saying that everyone agrees that it's possible. And the Shaybra say it's going to be ksheira. So when Shimon Elazar said the Rameir the Chum don't argue about a gluda that it's possible, seems to indicate that they never argued. But it doesn't go with Rav Shimon Elazar. Started off saying that he was chayzer. He was never chayzer. Why? Because he never argued. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Maya loy nechliku Amar Rameir loy Amar Rameir machliku. So when he said loy nechliku, he just meant he's not nechliku achshav. It was a machlekes, but right now he is not arguing. Says the Gemara, let's go one job deeper. Amar Mar, in the Shire Boy Keselik Shir, we said if there's a size of the skin of a seller remained, it's kosher. Heicha, ask the Gemara, where must this piece of skin be located for the animal to be considered a kosher? Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel, Apanei Shed or Kula. It has to be on the length of the spine. So Ibayilhu, the Arech, the Katin, Frak the Gemara, the Chimisarif Le Haviksela. Does Shmuel mean that if there's a long and very thin piece of skin along the spine, that if you were to pull it all together, it was the size of a sela, that will be enough? Or maybe he means maybe he means, yeah, it needs to be the size of a sela, but it has to be down the whole shidra, which obviously is a chumrah. He's saying a chumrah or a kula tashemat, the parsha of Nehuri Mishvei Shmuel, barechav sela b'nei kol shidra, kula he indeed was being machmir. But Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rashi Prakim, where does the size of a sela have to be? It has to be on the main joints of the body. Tiburai, it has to be opposite the navel. So 3 different places where the skin potentially has to be to make this animal a kosher. Stop over here. We'll pick up from over here as we're going to discuss what is the reason and what is this little piece of skin and why this deems the animal a kosher. Bisiyata dishmai.